I'm assuming you're here because you desire self-love, and what I'm about to say will either be the perfect reminder for you, or it'll be a fresh, potentially life-changing shift in perspective, or you'll think all of it's BS. I'll get right to the point. You don't need self-love because you are love, and recognizing this truth can bring peace. Now, let me expand on that. Let me explain, because that's a bold thing to say that you don't need self love. Here's what I mean by that. Several spiritual traditions teach us that our core essence is love. You could also swap the word love for all sorts of things. I've heard oneness, beingness, presence, consciousness, pure awareness, isness, that's one of my favorites, stillness, self with a capital S. So assuming you also believe this, that's helpful. Totally fine if you don't. I'm not asking you to. In fact, this is a good opportunity for me to say that this video is just for educational purposes, not a substitute for professional advice. I am not a professional. I'm simply here to share what's been helpful for me. I'm not here to tell you what to do or how to live or what to think, because personally I believe that you're your own best guide. I'm just here to share what I've learned. Maybe that sparks something that feels true for you. So only take what feels true for you and just ignore what doesn't. When I say I need to love myself, or even I love myself, I think it's interesting to think about what I'm really saying, because who is doing the loving? Who's loving who? So without realizing it, I'm creating a little bit of a division, the one who is loved and the one who's doing the loving. So are there two of me? Which one am I? Something to contemplate. Sometimes it definitely feels true that we are comprised of many parts or aspects. Keep in mind, there is the awareness of those parts, and who is aware of them? I am. In psychology, there are some modalities that explore this concept of being multifaceted. For example, the ones I'm familiar with are internal family systems, IFS, parts work, shadow work, and there's a lot of overlap with all of those. They have some differences, but the main teaching or the main message of those modalities is that they acknowledge the feeling of being made up of different selves or aspects, but they all emphasize integration as the key to well-being. So rather than viewing these aspects as completely separate, they are understood as part of a larger interconnected self. So dividing ourselves can lead to inner conflict, and then recognizing our unity brings us peace. Personally, I believe that true transformation and growth comes from recognizing myself as a already whole, indivisible being, aka oneness, beingness, pure awareness, etc. Because you are not what you're aware of. You are the awareness. You are the witnessing. And it's okay to forget this. I forget this all the time and become identified as being one of the many parts. And remembering the oneness, the beingness, always brings relief for me personally. So clearly, this video is not a practical guide on how to love yourself more. It's a perspective shift. And there are plenty of practical tools and processes and techniques to cultivate quote unquote more self-love, which can be productive and helpful, especially when balanced with the perspective that you already are what you're seeking. So sometimes these tools, after time, if you use them motivated by the belief that you need more self-love, aka self-love that you don't have, right? Because that's the underlying feeling of that statement of I need more self-love. You're saying I don't have enough. That's the feeling. I don't have enough. And that can be a trap in the sense that you end up continuously chasing the thing that you already are. It's already present, and your job really is just to uncover it, to just remember. not necessarily to accumulate anything or achieve anything. So you can think of it kind of like a dog chasing its own tail, going in circles, never quite catching it. The more the dog chases, the more it reinforces the idea that the tail is something to catch, but the tail is attached and it's there the whole time, just like self-love. If you're chasing it, you're stuck in a cycle of believing it's something outside yourself to obtain, when in reality it's already within you, it is you. And the act of chasing keeps you from realizing you already have what you're seeking. So the goal is simply, like I said, to stop chasing, wake up, remember. So use any self-love practices as a way to tap into what you already are. You want to use them because they feel good to do, not because you're trying to obtain something or get somewhere. So if looking in the mirror and saying, I love you, feels good, and you're not trying to achieve anything by doing it, then great, keep doing it. When we say, I need to love myself more, or how do I love myself? Again, what do we really mean? And what is prompting us to ask this question? Of course, I think it's very obvious that we believe that more self-love will make us feel better, and we're essentially right. A good question to ask yourself is, what am I thinking and believing that's causing me to come to the conclusion that I need more self-love? Let's get to the root. Let's talk about why someone might believe they need more self-love. Maybe they have a lot of negative self-talk. For example, thinking thoughts like, I'm not good enough when you make a mistake. They might have difficulty setting boundaries, for example, saying yes to events or projects when they're already overwhelmed. They might also have low self-esteem or confidence, which can look like not speaking up around others even when you have a good idea. They might struggle with self-care, for example, skipping meals, not getting enough rest because you're prioritizing others' needs. And of course, we're not saying ignore other people's needs, but most of us are at our best when we take good care of ourselves, which then allows us to take good care of others. They might have difficulties accepting themselves, so constantly comparing to others, comparing yourself to others. And then lastly, unhealthy relationships, so staying in a relationship where you're not treated with respect. And all of those that I just listed are technically symptoms. So what causes them? What might be the root cause? It could be unresolved past experiences. So, for example, growing up with a critical parent or critical caretaker. Conditional self-worth, meaning you only got praised for accomplishments. It could be internalized beliefs from society. So, seeing in this day and age with social media, you see highly edited photos of people in magazines, on social media, and you believe that's the standard of beauty that you have to fit into. It could be a lack of self-acceptance. For example, feeling like you need to change to align with what society deems acceptable or what your parents deem acceptable. For example, feeling like you have to be extroverted when you're actually introverted. It could be a fear of vulnerability or failure, so avoiding new opportunities out of being terrified to fail. And lastly, emotional disconnection. So as a child, maybe learning that certain feelings weren't acceptable and then having difficulty later in life connecting to how you feel. So it seems that the root cause is either unresolved issues from the past or ingrained beliefs that were implanted during early years, which is good news because it means it can be unlearned. So it's very clear that self-love is an innate quality we're born with. How do we know that? Just pay attention to how very young children have this natural self-acceptance and joy. And over time, it can be covered up by external factors like criticism, societal expectations, negative experiences, which lead to self-doubt and insecurity. And while those influences shape our relationship with ourselves, self-love is always present. It's been there all along, and it can be reclaimed through healing and self-awareness as we unlearn conditioned beliefs and rediscover our inherent worth. Because we all want to feel love, aka substitute any word for that. We want to feel peace, we want to feel joy, we want to feel happiness, fulfillment, general merriment. So if you realize that what you're seeking is what you already are, then it's not something you need to achieve. And this shift in perspective is profound because it moves the focus from how can I get more love or how can I get more self-love to how can I access the love that's always been here. And self-love practices in this sense become tools to reconnect with your true essence. It's kind of like tuning an instrument that's already capable of playing beautiful music. You're not trying to create the music, you're just bringing yourself into harmony with what's already present. When you align with the love you are, there's no chasing, only an experience of being whole and enough as you are right now. And some of that can take time, which is why you can't just necessarily snap your fingers and feel like all is well just by knowing that you are the love that you're seeking, right? So there's an unlearning, there's a relearning, an unlearning, a relearning, a healing that's going to happen. But you can always tap into this perspective shift when you find yourself falling back into the idea that self-love is something to be achieved or something you have to chase. Knowing that you already are what you desire should make you feel a certain amount of instant relief, even if it's only a tiny bit. And you can tap into this feeling at any time. What works for me is to just pause and take a moment, close my eyes, and just feel my own existence, just the mere fact that I exist. And you can experiment with this to find what works for you. Obviously, ideally, it's something you can do at any time. So I hope you found this helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.